another one, and then that one was for 6:30.
Oh, okay. So Sam, I'm assuming you're still on mute because we can't hear you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, that's on. Okay, cool. Okay, live is on.
Go to the Zoom app.
Zoom app.
Start recording. Record to cloud.
Oh, when did I turn my face around? Okay, I hit that, and is that it?
Go to Chrome.
Okay.
Tell them to stand by. You're just about ready to start.
Oh yeah, hold on, I'm almost ready.
No problem. It's okay.
Yes, I did that.
Then play the music. You're going.
We're going? Okay, cool. Awesome. I gotta play the music. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, bye.
It's okay, Sam. We're with you.
Okay, I'm here. I'm so sorry. All good.
It's okay. It's
We're
okay.
recording. We're live on Facebook. It's all good. We just had some technical difficulties with Zoom because Zoom is stupid sometimes.
It's okay. And then
Yeah.
when you're ready for me to do my intro, just give me a finger up and I'll go.
Okay. Do you guys usually play like your music first and then you do?
Yeah, we do the music first, and then I have like this intro that's with the music,
Oh, okay.
and then I'll go.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'll start right now then. I'll start the music.
Okay.
Welcome to Psyched by MG. This is Mary Grace Randazzo-Ratliff, or MG for short. I've been a psychotherapist in private practice for 32 years now. Guess what, everyone? We all have issues. So it's time to lighten up and move forward. Let's stop letting our crap control us and take control of our crap.
Good evening. Hi, Matthew.
Hello.
And, you know, we have a new producer with us tonight, Sam. So we want to say hello to Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
And Sam, you know, sometimes we get going on some great conversations and we tell our producers, if you have a thought or an opinion, you just feel free to jump right in because we invite you to do that.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And tonight, you know, before I start, I have to say you can find us on Spotify, Podcast Detroit, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Facebook, of course, we're right here live, LinkedIn. But if you could just please, I'm begging you, please take a moment and hit, you know, subscribe, like, please post comments. And especially tonight, because I was having a conversation with my daughter. We were talking about all of the COVID deaths and that we hit in this country 202,000 people now.
Over 203,000 now.
Oh my God. And see, we're really going up. And I had a thought, and I want all of our viewers and our listeners that I want to do a special tribute to people who have passed from COVID, because I'm not seeing any of that. And actually, my daughter brought it up to me. She said, Mom, there's no tributes to the people who've died from COVID. So if any of our viewers has a family member that they would like mentioned on the show, please Facebook message me, put it in the comments. You can write me at psychedbymg.com. But we would like to do a tribute to people who have passed and to really acknowledge what these poor families are going through. Mm-hmm. It's horrible, and they're not lost and they're not forgotten. You know, and the police officers that have died from COVID, the numbers are astounding. Medical workers, all types of people. There was a football player, I believe from USC, that they finally announced that he had passed away from COVID. And so I do want to acknowledge all those people who have died. And I would like to start a list of people that we acknowledge each week and just, send blessings to their families.
Mhm.
It's just so sad, Matthew. It's
And
heartbreaking.
and many blessings to the first, to everyone who's been
First
affected and touched by this, but the first responders too. And I know this has touched my life, and I think that's something that, recognizing, and you and I have spoken about that too, where, just the wide field of emotions that everyone is feeling, and,
Yeah.
feeling sad or mad or angry. And,
All
it's
of
like,
it.
because all of it, because, it's still something that is happening. And I think that, a lot of the, companies and the infrastructure and, just the agencies and, our economy, of course, we all want to go, get back to where we were and then some and continue to thrive.
Yes.
But we also need to do it where we can all be safe. And I think that's one thing personally for myself too. And being a first responder, working in, where I work, is that, it definitely, it doesn't, there's never a day that goes by that I don't remember or think about, how this has impacted, because it impacts me every day as well as, everyone else. But yeah, it's definitely, I want people to still remember that, it's, it's for everyone's safety and security, and,
That's right.
so that
That's
we
right.
can continue to thrive.
And, I want to also encourage the listeners to definitely, you can email me at Mary Grace at psychedbymg.com. But, we'd like to hear some of the special stories, I think, and what some of the family members have gone through, because, that deserves to be talked about. And we can definitely explore on this program, what happens to you with this kind of death and grief, or fears, anxieties. So please send us your stories, or at the very least, please give us names of people that we can acknowledge and pay tribute to, because this is just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. I didn't realize it went to 2003 already. I mean, I just got the statistic yesterday morning, I think, for 2002,000. So
203,000.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
203,000 people
Yeah.
in the United States alone. It's like 6 million in the world, I think.
Yeah.
So God, it's so sad. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, my daughter, Emilia, who's at U of M, University of Michigan, she just told me that she was so happy she made the decision not to do the one in-person class. She had an option to go online, and she decided to go online, and they just had a breakout of COVID in the class, so they had to shut it down. And they had only 20 people show up for the classroom, and the teacher said they have 3 positives so far of those kids. Now, I was thinking, and we will get to rigidity and the absolute thinker, but I was thinking 3 of the people she knows are nurses. They're nursing students at that medical facility. Holy crap. I mean, these students, U of M, president of the U of M, please, change what you are doing. Because these students are so connected with this medical facility. I mean, my God, this is crazy. So anyway, I hope our viewers will, definitely message us, send me an email, post some names that we can definitely pay tribute to. Now, Matthew.
We're going to get to some meat and potatoes, as I say.
We are going to talk about rigidity in relationships. Those people who, I call them, they think in absolutes. Like there's one way to do things. They can be very intellectual. They, they're obstinate in their inability to yield or to flex their thinking, and to appreciate another person's viewpoint. This kind of person in a relationship can really destroy a relationship because they're only living in their own world, so to speak. Now, people who are like this are not always just narcissistic, which is, you know, we've talked about narcissism on so many shows, and it's that person that, you know, has an inability to really bond with others, has the inability to live in another person's world, sees people there to just serve them and their needs are primary, and they don't self-evaluate. If they do, it's very minimal and can be manipulative. And they see other people's wants, needs, feelings, and knows as a burden and a problem. So there's narcissism that can create a rigid thinker, but there's so many other issues that can create it. And one, of course, is substance abuse and drug addiction, because that leads to narcissism. But the PTSD sometimes can do it because people have been in trauma and they can get really rigid in the way they do things because they're managing anxiety. And they're unaware of how controlling they can be because they are afraid, and a lot of them don't even know that they're afraid. But the dependent personality is another one. The person who's really, really clingy can, and I think, again, that's another fear-based person. But there's many reasons that people can be rigid and or think in these absolutes, like there's one way to do it, or they base it just on history with the person. Like if a person needs to not make a mistake, they will fixate on their partner's mistakes all the time. And will say, you know, well, you've made this mistake before, you're going to make it again. So this is why we have to do it this way. We have to do it by this rule. And you can kill a relationship when you have that kind of thinking.
Well, and it's almost it's a pool of denial.
Yeah.
That they're, you know, the person is existing in. And you've talked about this before, and, you know, we have too, is that, you know, on some level, denial is, you know, it's a part of our brain. It's a makeup of our brain, of our mental, you know, capacity that does help us to a certain degree. But I think exactly, and it's something temporary, left unaddressed and left, you know, unmitigated. Then that's where you start to get into these scary places where, and, you know, and I think not using that as an understatement, when you constantly see that person in denial and, you know, the refusal of the truth, the refusal of the reality. And when you're talking about, you know, this kind of these absolutes, linguistically, and just thinking about it, is that, you know, one kind of definition is that there's this idea that something or someone is free from, you know, imperfection. And it's like, you know, well, wait a minute. Well, then now we're talking about this kind of godlike complex sometimes. And, you know, like you said, the ability that comes out of the anxiety sometimes, and that fear. And I'm afraid to take my mask off because if you really knew me, you would know. And I used to give my clients that activity and that exercise and that homework. And I say, you know, if you really knew me, you would know ... Right. And that's part of that breaking through those absolutes and the rigidity and being able to take down these masks that so many people wear.
Yes. And to be people who are rigid and in absolutes, they're not in the moment with their relationship. And sometimes, you know, I have this term that I use often, and it's don't intellectually abuse somebody or intellectually dominate. And if you come into a situation or a conflict and you just come with facts works and you can't see your partner and you can't see what kind of day they had, or if they're really feeling insecure, or if they're tired and fatigued, or if they're hungry, and that these things can make people be off, screw up, not be able to think well, not be able to debate at all because they have fatigue and they have stress and they're exhausted and they have a world that they live in that makes them these imperfect people, just like the person who lives in absolutes and lives in rigidity, that you can't just lead by your head. And you can't just come at a problem in intimacy, in a relationship, with an intellect. You have to bring your heart into the picture. And for that person who there's some people that just don't know how to do it. Like, they come from these families that it's always about problem and solution. But the family doesn't know how to work with being vulnerable or emotional. And that disconnect handicaps you and can create this rigidity, this controllingness in you that really blocks somebody from getting close to you and letting their guard down and being vulnerable with you. Because if your partner is always afraid you're going to be judged or attacked, or you have to always be on with you, that's exhausting. They want to be human with you. And so if they've had a bad day, or if they're tired, or if they got angry at work because something happened, or the kids were driving them nuts, that partner has to feel comfortable enough to come and say, you know what, I feel like shit. It has been a horrible day. And they get to just vent. Or they get to say, can you just give me a hug? Sometimes these situations with vulnerability or complex emotions, they don't need a solution. They need a connection.
That is the solution.
And
right?
the
solution is the connection. And that type of nebulous, or just in layman's terms, I don't know where this is going, but that's part of the solution. Yes. Not knowing not knowing what the outcome is going to be, not planning for a specific type of emotion, not specifically, prioritizing in numerical Roman numeral form of how I need to feel and how I need to accomplish this and how it needs to turn out. That's part of that solution. Now, It scares the living shit out of people. And that's part of the work that we do a lot of times, and I'll say, I want you to find, one thing and, from your past that maybe you've even discussed with each other, but and like you just said, instead of being heady with it, I want you to discuss it only from the kind of the version of emotion focused discussion. Yeah. I want you to lead with your emotions and see what the outcome, just go along, ride the waves, don't plan for anything. And it's interesting, people, they do report that it feels weird. And why does it feel weird? People start to realize, well, wait a minute, how I grew up, right, is typically what we hear a lot of times. And, people start to remember who taught them how to feel or not feel, and how to have, feeling like you have to be in so much control, because if not, someone might think less of me, all these types of things that, come out of these where a lot of people think maybe they're personality flaws. I view them as strengths because you're connecting, like you said.
Yeah, that connection is so important. I remember when my husband and I first got together and we were living together, and I was so terrified, and I was not as good with fear, as I am today. I've changed a lot and evolved a lot. But when we first were living together, if we got into an argument, if he got upset, I would become so intellectual, and here I'm a therapist. The poor guy is, doing battle with a freaking therapist, and I can come up with a bunch of crap and sound pretty damn good. But the reality was, he was telling me about something that was hard for him that I did. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember standing there and I was on my soapbox and I was getting really heady with him, and I could hear myself. Like, the poor guy was just sitting there. He was calm. He wasn't yelling. I'm the one that's yelling. My PTSD is going freaking nuts. But what I said to him that changed the dynamic in the relationship, and I said, don't think I can't hear myself right now. Don't think I can't hear how heady I'm being right now. And I'm so stuck, I just can't control it. And my dear husband looked at me and he said, you look so cute right now. And he goes, I'm not laughing at you. He said, but I know that was hard to say. And I said, it was. And I finally sat the hell down. And I said, God, if you identify something that I'm doing wrong, I can't get, like, when that defensiveness comes up and I start doing the word battle that people do, they get really intellectual, they get one way of thinking, you get rigid, you get controlling, like it's got to be only this outcome. And you're not even aware of your partner at that point. They are not there. You are there to win. You are there to prove a point, but you aren't there to connect. And so for couples, it's to remember to connect. And when I finally said, Jesus, I can hear myself, like I just can't stop it very good. And I sat down and I said, man, I'm kind of embarrassed. And he's like, don't be embarrassed. I go, well, I get so wound up that it's like a physical thing that happens to me. And now, and I wasn't even aware of it at the time, now we're connecting. And I'm sharing my struggles with needing to be right, and my vulnerabilities and the things that I didn't do well when it comes to me feeling attacked or afraid. That's when the dynamics for us changed. And he, Dustin, he's this very mild-mannered person. When we first were together, I mean, I was a lot louder and more animated. And thank goodness he was able to just kind of hang with me and nod and stay calm. And then I finally got to a point where I could stop myself and I could take a step back and say, what the hell? The guy's not even arguing with you. And you're arguing as if you're in a courtroom. Chill out a little bit. Chill out. And then I think the key is get to know what's got you so defensive and controlling and wound up. Having that problem isn't the problem. Not knowing that doing that is a problem. That's where you're going to struggle. You got to own your shit. And we both do this, Matthew. When you're in with your partner and you're in a counseling session, we will say, just get good at owning your stuff. Just say, God, I'm screwing up right now. Or, oh, I know I sound heady. My husband, Dustin, has a business voice. He works for Ford. And I always say, oh, you got your business voice on right now. He's like, oh, I do, don't I? It's no big deal. He didn't do anything to me with the business voice. I just knew I had to cue him because when he has the business voice on, we're going to talk facts. Well, I'm talking to my husband. I'm not one of his partners at Ford. So it's so important. If you are the one that struggles with being controlling and the habit of getting rigid, be gentle with yourself. Pause. Number one goal, control impulsivity. Watch to see if you react and you go at a person quickly. I need you to slow down your reaction And if it is, because it is, when you're like that, it's such a fit, there's so much adrenaline to say, you know, I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm having a hard time being present. I can tell I want to fight right now. And I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with me.
Well, and I think too, also for everyone who's listening, and you and I know this is so, so acutely well, is that not only from our own experiences, but the work we do with people, is that things can change in the matter of an instant. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, is that, really for anyone listening, that, it sounds cliche. It sounds, that it's very kind
Yes.
of, dramatized to say, oh, well, things can change just in a matter of a second or a couple seconds. But the reality is things do change. And we've both had, not only professional experiences to where, it validates that and it yields those results where, when people say to us, if I just paused, or if I just was a little more patient,
Yeah.
right? Or like you said, if I just slowed down and recognized where this was coming from,
Yeah.
right? If I knew that it wasn't, my mom is yelling at me, but I'm really not mad at my mom. I'm really upset because I got in an argument with my partner or something, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, so then we redirect our anger, and then the anger turns, and like you said too, is that talk about it,
Yeah.
talk through it. Don't go inside yourself and don't bottle that up, because the oldest scientific trait in the book is the pressured pipe is gonna burst.
Yes, it is.
And then what happens, that pressured pipe bursts, and you're dealing with these absolutes and the rigidity in a much more restrictive environment. And what I mean by that is jails, prisons, right? These environments that exist
Yeah.
because it's an outcome of people. I think for me and my experiences,
Yeah.
asking people and requesting and asking that favor of all of us and all the listeners, be patient.
Mm-hmm.
Slow
Yeah.
down and perfect some of your silence and think about what's going on. Like you said, get out of your head and go with your heart for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people, would say, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I don't come from that kind of family. We don't do the feeling thing. You know, we hear all of this like all the time. And I say to people, holy crap. Um, our emotions let us know that there's something wrong. And our
Mhm.
emotions tell us to pay attention. So they are alert systems. Our emotions alleviate stress from the body so that we can make clearer decisions. When you take a problem and you just want to go to a solution without any connection to the emotional self, you are going to make some mistakes, and you are going to be experienced as somebody who's more detached. And I'm talking now, especially in your intimate relationships.
Mhm.
So you really need to educate yourself. If you don't come from that kind of family, that's okay. If you come from an abusive family in which feelings and emotions were scary because they turned into extremes, that's okay. But you do need to work on and educate yourself on how to be connected and to know that there's a middle ground with emotions, and they're important. And in intimate relationships, they're essential. They're about love too, and they're about joy, and they're about pleasure and passion. They're very, very key. And so this is not a business relationship. And even in business, they talk about the psychology of the deal. Well, I hate to tell you, that's emotions. I mean, we're talking about the
Mhm.
emotions and being able to read the room. So to do something to help yourself connect versus get more and more controlling and dominating. And for people who experience a relationship in which, we talk about the extremes, in which a person is abusive with you, physical, who it's their way or the highway, who doesn't allow your own integrity, your own values to even be present, that is not a relationship to stay in. That is not a relationship that you will grow in or be cared for in. And because it's not just about one person in relationship, it's about the connection, and that takes at least two people. So and not all people who are rigid or who deal in absolutes are like that all the time. But if a partner is like that all the time, I recommend you do a call to a therapist, and to read some books. We've talked about the books on narcissism, a lot in so many shows. One good one is The Wizard of Oz, Another Narcissist. We recommend that one. But if you are with a partner who isn't like that all the time, but they're like that frequently, I would keep true to yourself. Let your own feelings and wants and needs be important and not be wrong, because really heady people can outwit you, and get you to back off with the stats and the statistics and the research and all this other bullshit. And it's bullshit. Because if you're talking about intimacy or struggle, that isn't about facts. That, again, is about connection. And so if you are with someone who struggles with that at certain periods, sometimes people, Matthew, we use the word trigger all the time, where somebody with PTSD or somebody with anxiety who's had difficulties in their past with families who struggle with emotions or abuse or assault, they can get into an argument and get really controlling because they're terrified. And some of these people don't even know they're scared. And they can get absolute. And you have to figure out, well, what is going on between the two of us? I'm talking about being upset. For example, I'm sharing that I'm upset because one of the kids did something, and I'm frustrated with my partner, and my partner is saying, well, are you doing this right to that poor mom? Are you doing that right? Well, the kids struggle with this, and they start to lecture the person. Well, that mom is going to feel more shit. They're going to feel like crap. So that mom, as an example, can say to her partner, wait a minute, I'm venting right now. I don't need advice. I just need you to be present with me. Be proactive. Understand when you need to just vent something versus you really want them to give you a solution. And be direct about that. Say, I just had a hard day. I just got to talk it out.
Well, and it's teaching everyone and the people we come into contact with and we encounter and we work with, but also ourselves, practicing what we preach, but, how to communicate and how to effectively communicate. And, this is where, and language has always been so important to me because, when you really slow down and you understand what you're saying is and how I'm hearing it too, and kind of is, we need to be more compassionate, right? And so the level of compassion needs to be increased, right? And I remember, and I also believe too, is that, there's a lot of people walking around who are hurt people, and those hurt people hurt people. Hello, folks. Hurt people hurt people. I want everyone to hear that. Like, stop the madness.
Yes.
Hurt people hurt people. And so these people are walking around, and and I've as you have too, in personal but also work life, especially work life. I remember when I was a contractor and I worked in the prison system, and I would hear some of the most incendiary, just nasty and just kind of inflammatory comments. And and people around me, even my colleagues, would be like, "You're not saying anything. You're not." And I said, I don't need to. I know they're not talking about me, but I said, it's okay. I'm gonna, this one in particular time, I said, it's okay. I'll respond. I'm gonna let this person have his, his time. And I had said to him, I grabbed the mic and I said, and we had formalities, and which was really nice, the structure, but the structure in a compassionate way. So
Yeah.
you never knew, it wasn't about, again, the outcome. It was, we're going to be emotion focused. We're going to be patient with our emotions. And I said to him, I said, who hurt you? And he said, what do you mean? I said, for you to talk like that. I said, somebody really hurt you. And he said, the world did. I said, no, who hurt you? He said, again, the world. I said, no. There's someone hurt you. He said, and he started, I saw the eyes gloss over, and he said, my mother.
Yeah.
And regardless, and I didn't say anything. But just sometimes, and I say all this to say to viewers, to listeners, and to, people listening, is that it doesn't always have to be what we hear, but it can be what we see, and what we see may not always be what we see. And so, like you've said this before, it's like the person loses their face and they end up seeing someone else who reminds them of the hurt that they were caused. And now it becomes this hurt person kind of dyad. And again, it's like taking the time to be patient and compassionate and reminding. And I've always said too, I've said my response has been, I'm going to do you one better. I'm still going to work with you, and I'm still going to have compassion and empathy. And how about that? The person doesn't know how to respond to that, because they literally don't know how to respond, because they've never had to respond. Like you said, they've always had this, this street fighter mentality, and they've always had to just survive. And so there's so many listeners out there who just, and I'm sure they're feeling it, what we're talking about is that they've just had to survive just to get by. And I think we're both here to say, when you've done the work and you're putting in the work with yourself, and you're compassionate, and you're learning to practice being empathetic, and like you said at the beginning, evolving and learning how to deal with some of the past hurt and pain and trauma just a little bit better, then you don't have to survive, you get to thrive.
Yes, you get to live.
Mm-hmm.
That made me think of a couple of things, so I want to talk to masculine types, because this is not just men, because there are, women that take on more of that masculine side. And I want to say that for men or masculine types, that when a woman, a feminine type, is struggling and has had a hard time or a bad day, they need to vent, and they need to use their words. And I've talked about this on other podcasts, to understand the role of testosterone and progesterone in a man's body, in a woman's body, or a masculine type or a female type. And so testosterone keeps that person so connected to the physical body. And so we need to understand that connection, that if you're yelling at that person, they feel it. They feel it. They feel it in their skin. I'm on the feminine side, so I've got so much progesterone. If somebody's yelling, I'm in my word center, like I'm presenting my next argument. I'm getting ready. I'm getting loaded, right? But for the masculine type, they physically feel their body. And this is so important for people to understand. And for women or feminine types, you have to understand that. So when you're screaming at your partner, who may be a man or very masculine, they're feeling it. They're feeling it. And that will create a guardedness. For women, and we need our words, I need men and masculine types to understand, like, when they're coming to connect and to vent and to just feel the comfort of your presence, you have to let them use their words. So often I will see in couples therapy, the partner has such good intentions, but the man will say, yeah, I get it, but this is what you got to do about it. Here's the solution. This is how you fix it. Oh, well, just do this. And they'll stop her process. And I will interrupt him. I'll say, you need to stop, because she's getting clearer on what to do. She's getting clearer by using her words. And your best support is to just say, I understand, or, oh, that must have been so hard. You don't have to agree or disagree. You need to connect in that experience, because if you validate her and reassure her, she will calm down and she will get more secure and use less words. If you get in there and try to tell her what to do, you're going to make her more insecure. And so she then will escalate her anxiety and her words because she's struggling with insecurity. So for partners out there, I need you to know, especially men and masculine types, women's progesterone in a conflict, in a situation that's upsetting, takes us to our word center. It's just what our bodies do. And so we want words, we want to process those words, and we want to gain clarity, and we're intense. Validate, listen, support, and before you jump in to give advice, just say to her, listen, do you want me to say something, or do you just need me to listen? I remember there's one couple, she just didn't know what to say. He's like, well, do you just need me to listen, or do you want me to say anything? And she just looked at him, she goes, I have no idea. Because he had never been like that before. He always got in there and told her what to do and mansplained her. So just, you will see her de-escalate. And then when she feels the connection and the comfort through words, because we get soothed with the words, she's going to be able to hear then any possible opinions or thoughts that you might have. On the other side, for female types working with men or masculine types, please know, if you're really, really intense, and I say women can sometimes have a machine gun of words where all the sentences run together and our intensity overwhelms a person, take a breath, slow down. Men and masculine types, it's, sometimes it's assumed that they don't care when they shut down. I find a lot of men really do care, but they get overwhelmed. And I say to men, please tell her that you need her to slow down if she's talking too fast. Cue each other, talk to each other. And this way you're going to create an environment in which nobody has to be controlling. No one needs to be controlled because they feel out of control. And you don't have to be rigid. I mean, that is, I can't tell you how many couple sessions I do where I really have to go after this and say, and I have to say to women too, please slow down. He's glazing over because you're going so fast. And it's okay if you cue her and say, I want to hear it. Can you just slow down for me?
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then both people end up diverging and they start to disconnect. And like you said, it's like, I've had to say, like, listen, we're going to stop. No, stop. I'm going, for the next 2 minutes, I want you to sit here in silence. And I'm going to, and you would be surprised. I mean, it's the hardest exercise, the hardest thing, because you have to sit there and you can't connect with anything other than your body and the energy that you're, both are kind of contributing to each other. And you really do start to learn more about the other person. And I learned, about the couple is that, sometimes and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. And we process that and we understand that. But yeah, I mean, it ends up, like you said, it's like having them to say, wait a minute, stop, because you're doing what's going to the outcome here, which is sometimes what the main focus is of being absolutes and rigid. but the outcome is going to be the opposite of what you think what you're telling me you want to accomplish. I don't want to be less connected, but you're disconnecting.
Yeah. And for couples, you know, I remember this phrase from my professor years ago. When you get rigid and when the argument gets to the point where it's just about proving a point and winning, you do what we call the hot potato game. Well, yeah, but you did this. Yeah, but I did that because you did this. Yeah, but you've done that so many freaking times. I'm sick and tired. I'm doing that because you're doing this. And it's back and forth and back and forth. And I will say, okay, you done? Is this productive? Did anybody listen? Did we gain anything? Never play the hot potato game. Mm-hmm. You can say, I'm so scared you won't hear me. Or I'm just so worn out. We're back in the rut and I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to change the direction of this conversation. I do want to be on your side. I just don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. Attacking you is not fun. And use I terminology. I feel this. I'm concerned about this. I don't want to play the hot potato game. We're back into a habit here. I really am on your team. I am on your side. I want to be heard. I'm afraid you don't really hear that this is hard. And turn your words around to shift out of rigidity and absolutes and proving a point and winning to connection. Because that is so freaking key. Hope lives on the side of connection. There is not a problem that can truly destroy a relationship. It's how you deal with the problems. And are both of you committed to making it connecting with one another and getting through it together? It can't be one-sided. If you got one that's working and the other one's not, the one that's working is just going to end up, the love turns into resentment and you just destroy the relationship. I always say, if it's a one-sided relationship, you have cancer and eventually it gets terminal because both have to get into it.
So I say too, and I said to couples too, is that, you know, in the past, again, in processing the defenses, at some point they were helpful because they allowed you not to get hurt as much as you maybe were going to get hurt. But then you have to start then deciding, do you want the walls or do you want the relationship? Mm-hmm. Do you want the walls or do you want the connection? Right? Exactly. Do you want the walls or do you want the intimacy? Exactly. And like you said, that's where the intimacy, the relationship, the connection, that's where hope is. And there's no place for that resentment or hate or, you know, it can try to rear its head, but when there's hope there, and I just said this to a couple, I'm like, it's not about a couple meeting each other halfway. If both put 100% in, then neither one of you are worrying about your loyalty to each other.
That's right.
We're not talking about getting it right because y'all are going to fight like cats and dogs. But if you're putting that energy and that commitment in and that investment, like you were saying, then you're not worrying about that loyalty.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You know, my husband struggled with, he'll appreciate this. He struggled with when he was not feeling valued at work or when he was feeling underappreciated at work, he would get on me. You don't appreciate all that I do at home. You don't value, you know, what I'm doing. You don't want to listen to me. And it took us years to figure this out. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? You got like the best partner in that regard. Like I constantly like, thank you, honey. And oh, I appreciate that. Or, oh my gosh, I really love that you did that. And then I finally figured it out and I said, oh my God. And then we would end up in an argument. I'm like, what are you talking about? I just said, you know, thank you for this. And then I started to prove myself, you know, I did this, but I did it over here. And he's like, yeah, but you didn't do it over here. And I'm like, what the hell? Well, then finally, instead of arguing with him and proving my point, I sat down and I said, wow, you're really coming at me. Did you have a bad day? Did something happen at work? What's going on at work? And I realized, don't personalize it. Don't personalize something that when you're getting hit with something and you're like, what are you talking about? It probably isn't about you. And so I said to him, what's going on? Because I don't think I have this famous saying, Matthew has it too, I don't have my face right now. I just don't have my face. Like, I'm not sure who you're talking to, but it isn't me. Will you give me my face back? And I'm on your team and I'm on your side and I care about you, but I need to understand what you're going through. And then I want to know, what do you need? What do you want? How can I help? And it helps to stop or check the person, because that outside world drains us, stresses us out, especially now with all the freaking crap that's going on out there. And we tend to take it and we tend to take it out on the people we're closest to and our partners. And so that makes it hard. And
hello, like, we've been friends for how long? And this is for all people who are listening too, and this is a thing, therapists are humans too, and it's like, and I called you today, and was it today or yesterday? I think it was yesterday. And I said, you know, with transitions coming up and with changes coming up, and I said, I want you to please, I said, can you do me a favor? You said, oh, sure, honey. and I said, I need you to let me know when I'm not meeting your needs.
Yes.
I need you to please let me know, because I might be distracted and I might not be seeing everything in front of me. So I'm gonna, if you can let me know to help me get out of my way.
Yeah.
And this again, and for everyone listening too, this has taken me years to, get to that point. But it was such a breakthrough for both of us.
Yes,
and we've had many, so that's also too to stress to the listeners. You'll have many breakthroughs if you allow yourself to go in the direction that might be scaring you. It didn't feel good. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what she might, you might tell me to go get bent, and I'm gonna have to be like, okay. But I took the chance to be vulnerable and connect. And look at, I wasn't rigid and I wasn't absolute. I was imperfect. And you took my vulnerability and you cradled it with vulnerability. And so we met each other and we were invested in each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is so it right there. Now, Matthew, I know you have an appointment right after this. So I'm going to let Matthew, I'm going to do the closings and stuff. So I'm going to let Matthew go because he has an appointment. Blessings, Dal. Talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Sam and I.
Everyone, love you. Take care. Be safe. And I'll be talking to you soon.
Yes, yes. And so what I'm going to just reiterate is, if fear is at the basis of so many defense mechanisms, it really is. But when I say to a person, how do you know when you're afraid? They always think of terror. They think in extremes, like they really do. And I have to tell them, no. I'm talking about mild, moderate. How do you know when you're afraid? So if you are in a conflict with somebody and you get locked into winning, are you aware of how anxious you are? Are you aware of what you're like if maybe you're wrong or you're making a mistake? And then, do you come from a background that if you ever made a mistake, you got clobbered and judged and hurt? Well, you have to be aware of that, because then you're going to fight even harder. I came from a family that you freaking won because you got your ass kicked. And so often I had to be right, but it's not, especially intimate relationships, it's not about being right. It's that fear and that habit that you have in that argument locks you and gets you rigid, and you miss out on the present, and you're not going to be connecting with that person. And so I encourage you to get to know yourself. If you see controlling issues in yourself, I got them. If you see that you can be rigid at times, I do that. That's not a problem. That's not the issue. It's what do you do with that? And it's funny shit. I say this all the time on the show. Like, some of the rigid shit we do is funny. And if you could say, oh my God, I say this all the time to my family, I can hear myself right now. I know I'm lecturing. I can't shut up. I'm aware. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. I always say, give me a break. People start to laugh, and my kids will say, well, at least Mom, you're aware of it. And I'm like, oh my God, I've had a hard day. Like, I don't even think I could hear another thing. And then my son, who wants to be a therapist, will say, well, then you need to say that, Mom. Well, Mom can't be perfect. So really get to know, how do you know when you're afraid? What does your body do? Well, I used to clench my teeth like crazy. So I thought, oh, great. I call those physical indicators. Do you hunch your shoulders? Do you bite down? Do you not breathe well? Get to know that, because you're anxious and you're nervous, which means, okay, so if you're vulnerable, if you make a mistake, if you don't win and you fear judgment, you've got a lot of anxiety going on. We'll put words to that. Say, oh my gosh, I am so nervous right now. It's hard for me to speak. It's hard for me to own mistakes. I don't want someone judging me right now. If the person does, if you get vulnerable and that person becomes an asshole, that is a reflection of them and not you. Be secure in yourself. I've said this 1,000 times. If you want to know who a narcissist is, be vulnerable, have limits, have feelings, and have no's. They will condemn you for it, turn it into a problem and a burden, make you feel guilty. If that's who's in front of you, tell them there's the door, and don't let the door hit them in the ass on the way out. It is not a reflection of you. Good people, when they see vulnerability, will say, oh, no, it's okay. Or, oh, I'm that way myself. Or they will connect with you. The only way you're going to see who's in front of you is to get vulnerable and is to connect. So I think that's the key thing that I think I want everyone to hear tonight. And to get. And so if you struggle, all of us with our rigidity and all of us with our control issues or our absolutes, there's one way to do things. Ease up on yourself. We all have it. If you have it to a large degree, I'm going to recommend you get some counseling, because there's a reason you're like that. There's a reason you've evolved into that place. Still be gentle with yourself, but be responsible and take a look at it. You're responsible to fix it. You can't just use your past as an excuse to be an asshole. Don't. So, on that note, I also want to remind everyone again, please, 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 if you have the passing of somebody who you know from COVID, please let us acknowledge them. And if you want to just use their first name, we appreciate it, and we'll do that too. And other than that, I wish you a great evening. And I hope that you'll hit like and subscribe. We are everywhere: Facebook, Spotify, Podcast Detroit, Apple and Google Podcast, YouTube. We're everywhere on Psyched. Thank you.
Cool, there we go. Oh, I gotta stop it on Facebook. I forgot to stop it on Facebook, but I stopped everything else. Oops. And
Okay.